This video and all of its contents, including any opinions expressed by the narrator, are strictly for entertainment purposes only and is not intended in any way as a substitute for professional services and consultation from a licensed therapist, doctor, attorney, or other licensed professional service provider. Each person must make their own life decisions, and those decisions are theirs. Welcome back to Find Your Alpha. Today we have another terrific video, very intriguing video, but it is a long one. It's probably going to be my longest video yet, but it's one you'll want to listen to all the way until the end. The title says it all. My girlfriend rejects the DNA results, insists I'm the father, and gave the baby my full name. So let's get into it. The original post, as you can see, was from January 23rd of this year. I've just worked through a terribly difficult life situation, and instead of feeling relieved, reality has set in and I feel very sad and melancholy. So I decided to make this post for therapy. This is about me and my ex-girlfriend. Let's call her Bonita and call me Louis or Luis. We started dating a little over 2.5 years ago. We connected while she was cutting my hair. She's a successful cosmetologist who has her own chair and sink she rents at one of these beauty shop hotels along with other independent cosmetologists. She is 26 years old. I am the operations manager and head designer for a landscape company. I've been working there since I was 16. I'm now 27. And I love my job and my boss. The company was struggling and had lost many of its customers and employees. So at age 19, my boss, the company owner, asked me to step up into the crew manager position. I quickly rebuilt our team and started recruiting new businesses, for which I was paid a finder fee. Today, our company is 4 times what it was when I took over. I've done so well that the owner has given me 25% equity and 25% operational ownership in the business, which means I share in profits and would share in the sale of the business, to which I have first rights if I want to buy it. He feels without me, the company would have gone out of business within a year. Bonita and I clicked because she was a small independent business owner, is a hard worker, and was very level-headed. She was also a saver and quite frugal. She was not the typical girl I dated up to this point, as though she was very pretty. She has a thick build. Definitely not fat, but thick. I have nothing against women who are thick. I just had never dated one before. Regardless, we soon became very fond of each other. Up front, I told Bonita that I was not looking for anything serious now, since I was focused on building my business. I also explained I didn't believe in marriage anymore because of the divorce rate and the way men are treated in court. However, I did say that I'd like to find a nice woman to build a life and family with. She said her thoughts on life were very similar to mine, but she still believes in marriage with the right person, as it is something our community and our religion strongly believes in. We are both Hispanic Americans and are Catholic, attending the same parish. Bonita's family is from the state of Veracruz in eastern Mexico, and my family is from Sonora in western Mexico. Her grandparents migrated to the U.S. while my parents came here. Our families knew each other socially and made small talk at church events and community festivals and the like, but were not close friends, or they really didn't have any connections prior to our relationship. Initially, we saw each other 1 day a week. That quickly went to 2 days a week, and for the last 5 months of our relationship, we were spending 4 to 5 nights a week together before the discovery. We're going to find out what that discovery is a little later. We both decided it was important to have some apart time to concentrate on our businesses, our friends, and to keep the longing between us. So he says, to keep the longing between us, he's saying to keep that flame going between us. If I had to describe our relationship in a word, it would be happy. We connected mentally, physically, and had similar personalities. We just enjoyed each other. Bonita lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with Katrina, enter Katrina, who was also a cosmetologist at the same shop. I was not crazy about Bonita rooming with Katrina, as Katrina likes to party and go out to the bars and the nightclubs and the after hours places. Bonita, on the other hand, is a social drinker or doesn't drink at all and doesn't go out to the bars or the clubs. So again, Bonita sounds very good, very conservative type of woman. Katrina had also cut my hair once before I got to know Bonita and had pursued me, but she just wasn't my type of woman, as I don't like the drinkers and the clubbers. Good for you, OP. And again, OP means the original poster here, the guy who posted this story. I was afraid her habits were going to rub off on Bonita, but thankfully they never did. Well, that's a question we're going to answer later, poster, because I think some of those habits may have rubbed off on her. Over time, their friendship started becoming lost, and they were no longer enjoying living together, so Katrina moved out 6 months ago. She also moved her business to a different shop. To be honest, I was relieved, and Bonita was okay handling the rent and appreciated having the apartment to herself. I live in a converted commercial building on the back of my parents' property. When my dad bought his first house, he wanted to get as much acreage as he could to plant vegetables and fruit trees. Homes in our neighborhood were really cheap back then. In fact, some you could get for under $40,000. My dad bought our house and the 4 empty lots, 2 on each side, where homes were torn down, for less than $50,000. So we have a huge property and our backyard is massive. The property on the street behind our house belonged to a utility company which no longer used it. The property had an old brick building that was built super solid by the WPA. Now, the WPA was a work project investment that was made by the federal government years ago, where they went around and built all these big projects, flood walls, dams, and things like that. So they, according to him, they built this utility building 100 years ago. And this utility building was built very well, he says, because it had to handle heavy weight loads. The utility company vacated the land and building, and my dad bought it cheap. He gave me the building and land, and I have turned it into an open floor plan with a loft and an internal garage. It's the coolest building in our neighborhood of the city. Also, the landscaping on our entire property is top notch, as of course, that is my passion. Our neighborhood has since gentrified, so our homes are worth many, many, many times what my dad paid for them. Sorry for the rambling here, but I'm very proud of my dad and my mom for their accomplishments. Well, you should be proud of them because they've done very well raising a good son, it sounds like, and also very well with their investments in real estate. Last September, my dad, brother, and one of my cousins headed down to the Hermosillo area of Mexico, to spend time with my grandparents, do some repairs on their house, and visit with our extended family on my dad's side, all of whom live in that area. We had this trip planned for over a year, and each of us scheduled vacation time with our companies. While I was excited to go, I dreaded leaving my Bonita for that long, so we decided to talk, text, and FaceTime every day to not be so lonely for each other. The trip was awesome, and the time flew by. When I got back, Bonita and I picked right up where we left off. Our connection continued to grow, and our relationship was very strong, to where I started rethinking my stance on marriage. See, he's starting to break down now because he thinks he's found a very good, high quality woman. And from his description up to this point, I would have to agree with him. She sounds very good. Several weeks after returning from the trip, I noticed Bonita seemed to be more full in the body than normal, and her face seemed to be flushed. I didn't mind these things as they made her even more beautiful to me. When we were together physically, though, she would become very hot or overheated, something she had never done before, and she was also much more proactive, asking for the loving and wanting to be together physically. So what's going on with Bonita here? We're going to find out. A couple of weeks later, Bonita came to me and stated she had taken 2 tests that confirmed she was pregnant with my baby. I was surprised, as I had always worn condoms and was very careful putting them on and throwing them out and making sure we had no full body contact unless I was wearing one. She had a manila folder with her that had a bunch of articles she printed out with the studies indicating that condoms were not foolproof, with the failure rates ranging from 2 to as high as 7 to 8% in some of the articles. Well, one of the stories I did before said, I think it said it was up to potentially 9%, one of the articles said. He says, I think she did this as she knew I would question this. Well, yeah, that's the reason why she did this, poster, is because she knew that you wore protection and you were going to question, hey, wait a second now, how did you get pregnant with me wearing condoms all the time? I was happy about being a father and being Bonita's life partner, but wanted this to occur at the appropriate time. This was not what I planned, but sometimes life doesn't go as planned. We spent the rest of the night talking, and the next day I told my parents. My mom was disappointed, learning we were using protection and having premarital S, but was happy about having a grandchild. She told me I should marry to make things right. My dad was understanding, but he asked me if I was happy with this news, and I said yes, I was, just not planned. I then went with Bonita to tell her parents, and they both reacted very similar to my parents. They too started quizzing about marriage. Bonita then put out an announcement to her 5,000 plus friends and followers on Fbook, and we know what Fbook is, about our news, and she quickly got over 2,000 loves, likes, and hugs. Now, to me, folks, that's a big red flag. When an individual, a woman in this case, has over 5,000 followers and she's not a business or she's not an influencer, that's somebody that's really addicted to, social media. So that is always a red flag, but we'll see more about this as we go on in this story. She has connections with most of the people in our parish, our community, as well as other people she's met at her beauty shop. Well, a beauty shop is like a community center. And one of these hotels, or what they call a beauty shop hotel, where you got like a bunch of cosmetologists in there renting their own space, that place is probably very busy. So yeah, she probably interacts with hundreds of people, on a monthly basis in there. Things for us were great, and we grew closer, spending more and more time together as we prepared for a little one. We continued to live separately, but we were soon planning to move Bonita to my home prior to birth and then pay the rest of the 3 months left on her lease. Then out of the blue, Katrina shows up at my place of business. Always a bad sign. That Katrina is her former roommate that moved out, and asked if I could talk to her as she had a message to tell me. She said she believes Bonita cheated on me when I was in Hermosillo and her baby may not be mine. Now, knowing that Katrina and Bonita were now frenemies, he says, I initially took what she was saying with a grain of salt. She said 2 brothers came to the shop one late afternoon for haircuts. Katrina said she washed and cut the hair of one of the brothers, let's call him Chris, while Bonita handled the same for the other brother, let's call him Nick. They were from Greece and had been here for 3 weeks helping their uncle and aunt with their new Greek restaurant that opened late last year. It was a Friday, and they were scheduled to return to Greece on Monday morning. So they wanted to get their hair cut. Katrina said, since it was late, the brothers invited Bonita and I, meaning Bonita and Katrina, to a free meal at their uncle's restaurant, which we accepted since it was dinner time. We hadn't eaten lunch and we were starving. She said they drove separately, so this Katrina, and Bonita drove separately to the restaurant, and when they got to the restaurant, the entire family greeted them warmly and told them to order whatever they liked. It was their treat. Katrina said they were a great family, and the restaurant looked great, and the food was delicious. She said after the meal, they were all chatting in a bar area when Chris, which is one of the brothers now, that's the one that Katrina cut his hair, and I started talking about the waterfront and how that was something he wanted to see before he left. I told him I could take him there. I asked Bonita and the other family members if they wanted to go, but the family said they couldn't because they were busy at the restaurant. And Bonita said she was just going to chat a little bit more to the family and then head home. So Katrina says she and Chris were gone for about an hour and 15 minutes, and she dropped him off around 9 p.m. when the restaurant was closing. The parking lot was empty, and Bonita's car was gone, so she didn't think anything about it. The next morning at the beauty shop, now this would have been Saturday morning, she and Bonita were briefly discussing how good the food was and how nice the family was, and that was it. As mentioned, they were frenemies at this point. Now this is the poster saying this. He says, as mentioned, they were frenemies at this point, so this was rare that they were talking. A couple of weeks later, Katrina moved her business to another beauty shop. So, nothing out of the ordinary there. Now, here's where the wow moment happens. This is the moment we've been waiting for in this story. Katrina said she was out recently with several women at, where else? A bar. She said the girls had a couple of drinks in them and they started gossiping, and one of them suggested they have a biggest and best discussion, or a best and biggest discussion. This apparently is where each woman says the name of the man who was their best lover and the name of the man who was their biggest lover. I didn't know, the poster says, I didn't know this was a thing women talked about, but was questioning Katrina why she was telling me all this when Bonita wasn't there. She said one of Bonita's cousins was at the event. Let's call her Patricia. Patricia is still good friends with Katrina. So even though Katrina had a falling out with Bonita, Katrina is still friends with Patricia, who is Bonita's cousin. She said after they went around the table and were all giggling and laughing about their answers, Patricia spoke up and said, my cousin Bonita has us all beat in the biggest category. She said Bonita told her she was once with some Hulk guy from Greece years ago, and I underlined that because you're going to find out it wasn't years ago, that had a double-digit erect unit. So double-digit, you know what we're talking about here. She went on to say that Bonita said he was dumber than rocks, but had the body of a statue. She claimed he was so unique that she invited him back a second night to experience it one more time, then ghosted the poor guy. She said he was a broke busboy worker, and since he lived in another country, ditching him wasn't difficult. Man, what a cruel, cruel woman. I thought this woman was good, but now I'm hearing this story, and of course I'm thinking otherwise. I was hurt and concerned hearing this, but still was not sure why Katrina was telling me something about Bonita that happened years ago. Katrina said, Luis, don't you see? This didn't happen years ago. This happened when you were in Hermosillo. And that man was Nick. She said Nick is 6'3" and is built like Hercules, but he's no Socrates, meaning the guy's, big and muscular, but he doesn't have a lot upstairs going on. Katrina then said the rest of the people in the group, including Patricia, didn't know about the dinner that she and Bonita had with the brothers, the Greek brothers. So she just laughed and played along, while she was there at the bar, but knew she had to tell me this news as I should know. She said that Patricia told the group that Bonita did say no one could compare to her Luis, and that I was by far her best lover and her forever love. By this point, I had heard enough and thanked Katrina for letting me know, but in my mind, I thought she was lying, just trying to sabotage our relationship out of jealousy. Before leaving, she gave me the phone number of Chris and said, call him. I'm sure his brother Nick told him all about his times with Bonita. That night, I went over to Bonita's and we shared a nice evening like we normally do. So Luis went over to his girlfriend's house, his pregnant girlfriend's house, and they had a nice evening. But the conversation with Katrina was burning in my brain. I did not mention anything to Bonita as I didn't want to cause turmoil if this was all a big lie. The next morning, curiosity got the best of me, so I called that number of the brother, but the call errored out. Either the number was disconnected or I didn't dial right or something. As the morning went on, my head was buzzing with the information I got last night, so I decided to go to the Greek restaurant for a late lunch at 1:30 and thought I might be able to talk with the uncle and explain my situation. So he's starting to get desperate here. He's saying, I got to get this information now. I went to the restaurant and the food was great. I was finishing up my meal when the uncle came over to my table and thanked me for patronizing their establishment. He then said, I saw your truck and I see you do landscaping. I said, yes. And he said, I'd like to get an estimate on landscaping for the building. I finished my meal and we did a walk around. When we finished the walk around, I told him I would come back with a detailed estimate. I then asked him if I could take off my business hat and ask him a personal question. He said, sure, absolutely. I said, are you the uncle of Chris and Nick? He said, yes, they are back in Greece now. Did you meet them while they were here? I said, no, but a friend of mine did, and I wanted to get in touch with Nick to ask him a question. He asked me what the question was as he could relay the information to Nick. I said I'd like to ask him if he knows a woman named Bonita. The uncle's face lit up and he said, yes, I know he knows Bonita, and he is very sweet on her. She was here for dinner one night with a friend, and Nick and her had a couple of dates the weekend before he left. Ugh. And the poster says, of course, ouch, because that kind of confirms what this Katrina was saying. He said Nick thought they were in love, but she just ignored his calls and messages since he returned to Greece. Nick thought something might have happened to her. I, of course, was very sad learning this information. The uncle then suggested we call Nick and walk me back to his office where he speed dialed him on speakerphone before I even had a chance to explain. Nick quickly answered and said some things in Greek to his uncle, and they had a back and forth conversation that I didn't understand. The uncle then said to me, how do you know Bonita, and could you get a message to her for Nick? I said to them, I don't want to ambush you with this information, and I'm not mad at you. I'm just sad right now. But Bonita is my girlfriend. The uncle was very surprised, and shock was on his face hearing this. He then started talking to Nick in Greek for several minutes, and then slowly hung up the phone. He said, I am very sorry for this, and so is Nick. He did not know you were married. I said to him, we're not married, but we have been a couple for over 2 years. I asked if Nick said anything to him about the relationship just now, and he said no, other than he didn't know about me, meaning know about Luis, and he was very sorry about this, and he was upset that Bonita didn't reveal this. He said Nick is heartbroken as he wanted to get into a love relation with her. I asked if Nick said they were intimate, and the uncle hesitated and said, I'd rather not say, and then said, I'm very sorry for you on behalf of Nick, myself, and my entire family. So by the uncle not saying or saying I'd rather not say, that means yes, they did, of course. That night I talked to Bonita. I told her I was at the Greek restaurant and asked if she had been there. Now listen to this here. This is what you're going to find out is trickle truth or truth crawl, as they sometimes call it. She was surprised and said, no. Was it good? I said, yes. And I also said that I ran into Katrina. And she said you and her went there for a free meal. Bonita said, oh, yes, I do remember. We got a free meal for doing a good job of washing and cutting the hair of the owner's relatives. Now, notice she doesn't say the owner's nephews. She says the owner's relatives. He says here, maybe I should have been more tactful, but I just put it out on the table and said, tell me about your relationship with Nick. She said, with who? I said, Nick, you know who I'm talking about. Did you have relations with him that weekend? She said, what are you talking about? And was getting upset. I said, I spoke to Nick on the phone today, and he confessed everything you did that weekend. She said, he's lying. We didn't do anything. I just gave him a ride around town in my car after dinner. So first she says she doesn't know about the restaurant. Then she said, oh yeah, I was there. Then, she says, who's this Nick? And now all of a sudden she gave this Nick a ride in her car. Okay, this is trickle truth, or this is truth crawl. A prime example. I said, why didn't you tell me this before? I don't believe you. Did you not tell people he was your biggest lover and I was your best lover? She said, no, whoever told you that is lying and just trying to break us up from jealousy. I told Bonita that based on this, I wanted a DNA test done, and she quickly agreed. I said, okay, I'll make the appointment tomorrow. She then said, no, no, no. I'm not doing anything before our baby is born, but I'll do the test after birth. I agreed, as I didn't want to upset her, but said our relationship is going to be under strain until then because of this, and that we would not be moving in together. So this guy is such a nice guy. He's going to let her slide with this until the birth of the baby, and he's going to still be in a relationship with her. She cried, so I told her I would be there to support her through her pregnancy no matter what. So he's saying, no matter what, even if you had this affair with this Nick, and maybe your baby's not mine, I'm still going to be with you through your pregnancy no matter what. Oh man, Luis, what are you doing here? She said, everyone is lying. Why don't you believe me? I love you more than anything and would never do something to hurt you like that. I swear. Now keep that in mind too when you find out what actually happened here. The next day, Bonita made a post to F-Book saying troublemakers were trying to break up our relationship, and it has given Luis cold feet about being a father. She asked for prayers and got over 1,700 likes and prayer and hug emojis. When I found out about this posting, I asked her to take it down as it was not truthful, and she deleted it. So there she is out on Facebook now. Later that night, Katrina made a post stating that no one is causing trouble for Bonita. She did it herself, and she is not giving Luis the truth about their relationship and baby. This post got a bunch of, oh shit, and angry emoji replies. When I found out about this post, I asked Katrina to delete the post, and she did. But by that time, word was already circulating throughout the community that Bonita cheated on me and the baby might not be mine. Oh. From that point until the birth, our relationship was strained and distant. But I continued to support her and actually bought her over $1,400 worth of things for the baby, like bassinets and strollers, tubs and the like. What are you doing here, guy? The baby was born and I was at the hospital and held the baby. He was beautiful and I teared up. As I was walking past the station on my way out, the head nurse said she had a birth certificate here for me to sign as the father. Don't you do it. I discreetly advised the nurse that I would be signing after we completed DNA testing. She was surprised and apologized profusely, stating, Bonita told her to go ahead and type my name on the certificate above the father's signature. She said she would amend the document immediately. Bonita now refused. Now, she had the baby, and that's what she told him before. She would have the DNA test, but now she's refusing to get the DNA testing at the hospital and said, don't you love your baby? He's yours. You can see it in his face and his features. He loves you and I love you more than anything. Don't make me get that test and break our trust and ruin our family. I told Bonita I need to have certainty, but she didn't budge. That night, here she is again on Facebook. She posted a picture to Facebook of her and the baby with a shirt on the baby that said, Daddy's boy. She had a caption saying, Daddy loves me, but has cold feet about being a parent. So here she is again, portraying to this big community she has on F-Book, 5,000 plus people, that, oh, her boyfriend is getting cold feet and troublemakers are out there trying to break us up, which is all, not the complete truth. And she says, please pray for us. The post quickly got over 500 responses before I saw it, and I called her to take it down, which she did. Why are you putting up with her, Luis, posting all this garbage on Facebook? You needed to lay down the law the first time she put that post up there and say, no more posts about this subject or we are done. Finito. My boss suggested I take her to court to get the court to order a paternity test. He connected me to an attorney, we talked, and he started the process. I didn't want to resort to this, but Bonita gave me no choice. In court, the judge asked why we were asking for this, and my attorney stated that I wanted to have custodial rights to the child if it was indeed mine. Bonita was in court without an attorney and said she would voluntarily give me 50-50 custodial rights of the child without a proceeding or a test. Well, of course she would, because she wants you to take on the fatherly role for this child. The judge asked my attorney, is there a question as to the paternity here? And my attorney said, yes, Your Honor, and we can provide witnesses to testify as to that fact. The judge then rendered judgment and requested the paternity test and said she really hoped everything worked out for both of us because that baby should have a loving mother and father. In the meantime, now listen to this, Bonita gave her baby my first name, and for the baby's middle name, she gave my middle name hyphenated with my last name, retaining her maiden name as the baby's last name. So now the baby carries my full name. How confusing this will be for him. Absolutely it will. Well, the date for the testing came and went, and Bonita did not show, so we had to go back to court, and this time the judge ordered her to take the test or she could be held in contempt. So she finally did take the test, and now we're going to see the results. And what do you all think is going to be the results here? I know what my thought is, but I'd like to know what you thought in the questions, or in the comments, I should say. And here we go. I am not the father. Not a surprise there, Luis, that you're not the father. And he says, I already knew this deep in my heart. I thought finally getting this all resolved would give me relief, but instead I feel a deep, dark depression like I've never felt before. I've lost my love and a baby I wish were mine. Now some in our parish and community are saying, just step up and marry her and be a father to that little boy. He says, I wish I could be a better man and do that, but I just can't. And my strong suggestion here is not to do that. I know there are some men out there that are going to disagree with me and would say, hey, I would gladly step in here and be a white knight and be this baby's father and marry this woman. My suggestion is not to do that, not to take on that responsibility. You, Luis, in this case, you deserve better. What this woman needs to do, this Bonita, she needs to go out and find the father of the child and get into a relationship with that man, Maybe not a love relationship, but at least get that man into this baby's life to be the father figure. This is not your responsibility. Our priest actually had a private discussion with me and told me a Bible story of a man, I believe his name was Jacob or Joshua, who went off to battle. And when he returned years later, his wife had given birth to another man's child as she thought he was not going to come back. Our priest said instead of being angry, Joshua or Jacob professed his love for his wife and took responsibility for the baby, and they lived a wonderful, happy life. The priest said he wanted to tell me this story to show that relationships like this can work, but he would respect any decision I made. I told him the man from the Bible was a good, brave man, but I could not do something like that as my situation was different. Well, yeah, your situation was different. Back in biblical times, they didn't know if somebody went off to battle and were gone for years if they were going to come back. Your situation, you just want a vacation for a short period of time and your girlfriend cheats on you. Totally different situation. He says here, I can never trust my Bonita again for what she has done. Our priest said he understood. In spite of the truth coming out, Bonita continues to make posts on F-Book of she and the baby referencing me. The latest had the baby in a one-piece outfit with an abbreviation, Junior, meaning he was my junior. However, since the truth has come out about me not being the father, few people other than some of her family members and closest friends are responding to the posts. I think like me, people are concerned about her mental health. Well, and they should be. I've since had another discussion with Nick via his uncle and told him about the paternity test and that he was likely the father. He said he's tried getting in touch with Bonita, but she has now blocked him. He's going to come back over next month, so he's coming back to the United States for 3 weeks and will try to meet with her. He'd like to be a good father to the boy and would like to relocate to the USA. I told him before jumping ahead, he should first get a DNA test. Well, that's good advice because you don't know if this baby is even his. He said he has been in touch with an attorney in Greece who said there's little he can do as Bonita is an American citizen. Nick is going to speak to an attorney when he gets here. I do hope Bonita comes to her senses and gives Nick a chance to be a good father and help him become a citizen. He seems like a good man and he has a good family. I wish nothing but the best for Bonita, her son, and for Nick. Boy, you're a good guy, Luis. To give the baby Luis a good start, I bought him $1,000 worth of Bitcoin at PayPal and deposited $1,000 into a savings account through PayPal as a birth present. Man, you shouldn't do that. And here's the reason why. I know you're thinking it's a good-hearted gesture, but this Bonita now potentially could take that information and go to the court and use that as demonstration to try to get support from you. You know, and you also bought this child all this furniture and stuff before. You know, again, I know you're doing this out of the goodness of your heart, but it's not advisable. I wouldn't advise it from a legal standpoint. He says here, I know I shouldn't have done this, but it made me feel good with my prosperity, he says. Finally, I took Katrina out to lunch, smart, and gave her thanks for telling me about Bonita's affair. While I don't like Katrina's ways, I will be forever grateful to that woman for all of my life. Well, definitely, because if she didn't come forward and give you this information, and let me tell you something, I don't think Katrina would have given you this information if she was still friends with Bonita, because women have a way of keeping these secrets. But because now they are enemies or frenemies, as you called them, she was very willing to give this information. So whatever the case, you do owe her thanks. And he says, that's all I have to say. Thank you if you stayed on and read my full story. God blessings to everyone. Well, thank you, Luis, for telling your story. It was a hell of a story. I really enjoyed it. Now, I want to give some advice right now to you, Luis. First of all, you are a good man. You are a successful man, and you've got a very bright future. You're going to have women beating down your door because of your situation. You're a business owner. You're a hard worker. You're a pillar of the community. You own your own business. You own your own house. I mean, you've got everything going for you. You're only 27 years old. Your future is bright, but you're too nice of a man. You've got to really kind of button up a little bit and use this experience as a learning experience, and don't repeat these mistakes in the future. Now for Bonita, you need to get help. And I think you need to get psychiatric help. Trying to pin this baby on this good man is totally unforgivable. And to make things worse, I think you actually planned this out. I think you cut this man's hair, this Nick's hair. You saw that he was a real physical specimen. And I think you wanted to mate with him, knowing he was going to go back to Greece and you would never see him again. And then your Luis could step in and be that baby's father and provider. Hopefully you didn't do that and you didn't plan it out. But somehow I think that was your plan. And if you did, that is totally evil and totally devious, and you need psychiatric help. Next, I would suggest you change that baby's name. What's that baby going to do in 7 or 8 years when he grows up? And he's going to say, Mom, why did you give me this name again? And you've got to explain that, oh, this was the name of a former boyfriend that I cheated on. Change that poor baby's name and give him a good name so that he doesn't have to go through that. Next, stay off of Facebook. Facebook and all these postings that you're just doing that for attention. So stop that. Back off of that. Next, recalibrate your life and, do an internal search and look at yourself for where you went wrong. Because when this story started out, you were a good woman. I thought you were a high value woman. And then you made a terrible decision, and now you've changed your whole life and the whole trajectory of your life. You got to get yourself back on track. Next, leave Luis alone. You've done enough damage to him mentally, and you just need to back away from him and not have any more contact with him, and let him go on and live a happy, healthy life. Finally, I would suggest that you voluntarily get a DNA test with Nick, your boyfriend from Greece, and let him into this child's life if indeed he is the father. Don't make him jump through hoops to do that. Your baby needs a father figure, and this man has already communicated to Luis that he wants to step up and do that. So reach out to him proactively and start that process. That is my suggestion to you, but in a nutshell, you definitely need to get some help. So those are my thoughts. Now I want to hear from you, the community. What did you think about this story? How do you think Luis handled this situation? Do you think, like I think, that Bonita may have planned this whole thing out? Let us hear from you. And I'd like to hear from the women out there. I really like getting the comments. We've gotten some comments on some of my videos from women, and they've been very eye-opening. So I really appreciate that. If you like this video, please smash that like button, because it really helps it get put up in the algorithm. Share this video with your friends and family, and please subscribe to this great channel if you haven't done so already. Our channel has tripled in size in the last 10 to 12 days, and I want to keep this going. So thank you for watching, and I will talk to you on the next one.